Understanding adverse action letters when you're getting ready to sue credit bureaus. Welcome to the next video in our series on So You're Ready to Sue Your Credit Bureaus. This one, we're putting it near the end of the series, but may not be the best place for it. It's a tough call. You need to have adverse action letters before you file a lawsuit, but a lot of folks get adverse action letters and don't know what to do. So we'll be answering a lot of questions in this video. Hi, this is Consumer Protection Attorney Bill Clanton. I've helped thousands of consumers, regular folks like me and you, overcome negative, inaccurate credit reporting, debt collection harassment, bad background checks, and a whole host of other consumer-related issues. In this video, we're covering adverse action letters. We're going to talk about what they are, when to expect them, what they mean, and we're going to look at a few of them. So let's get started. So what is an adverse action letter? An adverse action letter is required by the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. The ECOA says that credit grantors cannot discriminate against you based on your race, your gender, a whole host of other things. And in order to guarantee that creditors, potential creditors, banks, lenders, are not discriminating against you on any basis, they are required to send an adverse action letter. The adverse action letter sets out the reasons that a creditor turned you down for credit. They will say where they got their information from. So you can expect to say Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, Innovis, Early Warning, or some other credit bureau gave us some information. And this is the derogatory information about you. They may include credit score also. We got it from this bureau, and this is why we're turning you down. So they can say that they're not turning you down because of your name or your race or your gender or your orientation, anything else, right? Only because of the information received from some third-party credit bureau. Okay, so when you get the adverse action letter, you're now free to get a credit report from the entity that gave them that information. An adverse action letter entitles you to a free credit report. Now, this is not as big of a deal as it used to be. You can now get your credit reports once a week for free. The bureaus agreed to turn them over to you permanently for free. So you can always get a credit report for free, but the adverse action letter entitles you to another one for free. And that's to help you identify errors in your credit report and remedy them through the process we've been talking about in previous videos. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's how you can use an adverse action letter in litigation, right? So you've been through the process we've described in the previous videos. You've found an error, you've disputed it, you got dispute results, you applied for credit, and now you've got an adverse action letter. Language in this adverse action letter, if the language in this adverse action letter matches the language in the errors that you pointed out in your dispute and the errors that they failed to correct in their dispute response, then you've got a case of actual damages. You have been turned down based on the error you pointed out to them and they failed to correct. This is a rock-solid evidence in a Fair Credit Reporting Act case. The courts have said that a credit denial is damages. And while it's frustrating, people lose sleep, people lose their appetite, suffer insomnia, a whole host of other things. And those are all forms of mental anguish and emotional stress. Those are not rock solid. They're kind of soft damages, right? One person says it. Somebody else said, well, I didn't notice them. They were still productive at work. Or they have to be corroborated many times. If you start talking about mental anguish and emotional distress damages, then they will start to have medical records that support that. It can get messy quickly. And so if you have an adverse action letter that matches your negative information in your credit report and in your dispute, then you've got rock solid evidence that the bureaus failed to do their job. And it's great grounds for a Fair Credit Reporting Act claim. So how do you get an adverse action letter? Well, you apply for credit. Look, you're free to apply for credit as little or as often as you like. You can apply for credit buying a car, buying a house, applying for a mortgage, going to a department store, getting a department store credit card, going to the mall, getting a credit card from a store in the mall. You can go buy jewelry and apply for credit on credit. You can apply for credit buying jewelry. There's any number of ways that you can apply for credit. And you are free to apply for credit, like I said, as little or as much as you like. And you will get an adverse action letter if there's an error on your credit report. If that error is significant enough to generate an adverse action letter, then you know you've got a strong error. You know you've got a significant error on your credit report. So you can get an adverse action letter by applying for credit. So let's take a look at some adverse action letters. Okay, here we are. We're looking at an April 2023 adverse action letter from Capital One. They're writing in response to an online request for pre-approval. They said they cannot approve this person for a rewards card or any number of cards. And here's why. The balance on your credit report from one or more agencies below, or a proportion of account balances to income, is too high. And it says they got the information from one of these four entities: Experian, Equifax, LexisNexis, or TransUnion. This puts the consumer's credit score in here. It's been redacted, and you have a right to know under the Fair Credit Reporting Act the information in your credit file at the Consumer Reporting Agency. And then it's got some language about the Equal Credit Opportunity Act here. The Federal Equal Credit Opportunity Act prohibits creditors from discriminating against credit applicants on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, age, provided you're old enough to enter into a contract, or because all or part of your income derives from a public assistance program. Okay, so this is a Capital One adverse action letter. Here is a Bank of America adverse action letter. This is just a one-pager. You can see that they did not approve the request because current or past delinquency, derogatory public records, and or collection accounts. And you can see here that it was Experian where they got the information from. So this person is entitled to a free report from Experian, which is less of an issue now because it's much easier to get a free report. Here is a Wells Fargo. This one's a few years old, but it says that about your application, we are unable to offer you a credit card account, and it lists the reasons. About our decision based on whole or part on a consumer report, and that report came from Experian. And that report came from Experian. Okay, and here is one from Saks Fifth or Saks First credit card account from Saks Fifth Avenue. And it says they're unable to approve the application. To obtain specific information, give them a call, and we will send you a written statement of reasons. So they can do this. They can say that you can reach out to them and get them. Usually they just give the results, the actual reasons, but they do have to say where they got the information from. And you can see here they got it from Equifax. So these are some adverse action letters. This is what to expect to see, and you can expect to see the error. If you get a message like this, thank you for applying, make that call, send that letter, and get those reasons, because those reasons will be or could be the basis for a case under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Okay, so now you've seen some adverse action letters. This is what companies are sending out. These are letters that you may receive something very similar to. Be on the lookout for any adverse action letters, and then try to see if the language they have in them is what you've disputed. That's going to be the key to unlocking a great Fair Credit Reporting Act case. Thanks for watching this video. We're getting close to drafting the Fair Credit Reporting Act lawsuit in your case, so stay tuned. Look, if you think I've earned a subscription to this, to my channel, if you think this information is valuable, please subscribe. Thank you.